Hi, I'm Rhiannon Fionn. I am the producer of Coal Ash Chronicles. That is a transmedia project that includes a documentary film and a book and more. I've been researching and reporting on coal ash since 2009. I got my start in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where we're at now, near the Riverbend coal plant. I became interested in coal ash simply because an editor assigned a story to me, and I started digging into it. And once I realized that the high hazard coal ash impoundments in Charlotte were on the city's main drinking water reservoir and draining several pounds of arsenic into the lake every day, that I just couldn't put it down after that. That seemed really important and exactly what journalism is meant to look into and shine light upon. So that's how it all began for me. These dams, they're earthen dams, and they kind of have a sloped edge, and the toe of the dam, what they call down here at the bottom, the toe of the dam is actually in the lake. And so that means that the dam itself is saturated with water, and so that presents some stability questions. Edge and the toe of the dam, what they call down here at the bottom, the toe of the dam is actually in the lake. And so that means that the dam itself is saturated with water, and so that presents some stability questions. And he was also speaking about stormwater runoff being a major issue. About an hour away from here this week, there was a stormwater spill at a coal plant where they have had a breach at one of their coal plants in the past, back in 2005, because of stormwater runoff. So these are all things that groups like the Cowboy River Keeper are paying attention to. I'm sure the company is paying attention to it. I sometimes question whether the state is paying attention to it. It's really important to understand that these dams were exempted from the state's Dam Safety Act of 1968 until 2010. At that point in time, the legislature passed a bill that moved the authority over these dams from the Utility Commission, which is part of the Department of Commerce, to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, which has changed its name to the Department of Environmental Quality. So the Department of Environmental Quality is relatively new to dam safety, and following the Dan River spill in 2014, I actually asked them, because 4 years had passed since that law had passed. So I said, don't you have all of the reports, the past inspection reports and things like that? And they were like, no. And I said, well, why don't you? And they, their response was basically, well, we didn't think to ask, and I guess they didn't think to send them. So as recently as 2014, and this is 2016 now, they really were not on top of dam safety. So that's why I have some questions about DEQ's ability to really be the watchdogs that we need for this particular type of issue. In fact, in recent weeks, they've made comments to me that capping these pits in place would prevent dam failures. Well, I have not spoken to any scientist or engineer who agrees with that. They do agree that dewatering can help reduce the risk of a dam failure, but none of them will agree that it eliminates the risk. I got in touch with the EPA though, and the EPA seemed to be on the same page as the DEQ. So, I've interviewed some people in the past who've said this, so I'll just repeat them. It seems like in this situation, the laws have not yet caught up with the science, and I think people recognize that, and that's part of their overall concern. So this draining from the ponds is completely legal. In fact, in the current permit, there is no limit for how much arsenic can be discharged into the lake. Now there's some wrangling over that. There's supposedly a new permit that's going to be coming out, but the question is, will the permit come out before they finish dewatering the ponds? But because of the arsenic spikes, the the company, even though they didn't have to, they stopped discharging. It'll be about 6 to 8 weeks that they'll stop discharging. They'll resume in September 2016 after they've installed a filtration system that should capture a lot of those contaminants. But they are not in violation of any law, and they, so because they're not in violation, they haven't been, fined or cited or anything for the discharges.
Do we know if there's any past spills or violations that have been a major concern, or?
Not at these coal ash impoundments. We do know now that they're monitoring the groundwater nearby. We do know that there's contaminated groundwater near every single one of the coal ash impoundments in North Carolina. All of them are unlined. Here at Riverbend, the ponds are 70 to 80 feet deep. You could stack a couple of telephone poles end to end and just see the top of the telephone poles. That's how deep they are. And they're located on the bend of a river where the ground is already really saturated with water. So we know for sure that the ash is soaking in the water table because there's no liner, and that's just how deep they are.